I've said before that breakups can actually be harder on the avoidant, even if they're the ones who initiated the breakup. So what actually happens when the avoidant realizes that their partner is gone? If you're new to attachment theory, there's 4 main attachment styles that we cover. There is only one secure attachment style, and that's the secure attachment style. The rest of them are insecure. The anxious preoccupied is preoccupied with a relationship or the idea of a relationship, so they really struggle with independence. The dismissive avoidant is hyper independent, so they fear getting too close in a relationship. And the fearful avoidant is a mix of both anxious and dismissive. That's why this is the disorganized attachment style. And if you didn't know already, everybody has an attachment style. So it's quite common for the anxious preoccupied and the dismissive avoidant to get involved with each other, and I talk about why in another video. But today we're going to be talking about what happens after breakup when the dismissive avoidant finally realizes that their partner is gone. Now, avoidants were conditioned in their upbringing to suppress their emotions because their caregivers were emotionally distant and they just didn't provide those deep emotional bonds that a child needs. So this conditioning carries over into adulthood, and instead of expressing their emotions in a healthy way, the avoidant just buries their emotions, and they feel that they really only have themselves to rely on to process their emotions. Now, because of this, the avoidant is much slower to process their emotions. It takes them more time and space, whereas the anxious preoccupied, they kind of process their emotions too quickly. They're so quick to react to and express their emotions. Now, remember that because we're going to get back to that shortly. But real quick, let's review the relationship pattern between the anxious and the avoidant for those of you who are new. So, they get involved with each other, and the avoidant is so amazed by the anxious preoccupied's emotional availability and emotional expression because it's something that they didn't get to experience from their caregivers. So they're so drawn into this, and both partners are bonding so well. They're on honeymoon avenue, right? Until inevitably an insecurity is going to be triggered in one of the partners, right? In either partner. And when that happens, we get into this enabling cycle that I've talked about before on this channel. But when an insecurity is triggered, it's going to cause the avoidant to pull away from the relationship. And that's pretty common for the avoidant. They start pulling away from the relationship. Now, when they pull away, it's really going to trigger the anxious preoccupied's insecurities, their fear of abandonment. So in response, they're going to try to save the relationship, right? They're going to hold on tighter, and they're really going to start to over-pursue their avoidant partner. But when they do that, it's only going to trigger the avoidance insecurities, their fear of getting too close in a relationship. And when the avoidance insecurities are triggered, they're only going to pull away even more. And when they pull away, the anxious insecurities are further activated. So this is just a continuous trigger pattern of these two attachment styles enabling each other's insecurities. Now, the anxious is not going to chase forever, right? Eventually, they're going to get exhausted and they're going to break this cycle, right? And they're going to go no contact. Now, when they do that, they can really begin their healing journey from the breakup. And remember what we said earlier about these two attachment styles and the speed at which they process their emotions. So the anxious processes their emotions more quickly, whereas the avoidant takes more time. They're much slower to process their emotions. So what does that mean post-breakup? Well, right after breakup, the anxious is devastated, right? It's so obvious because they express that devastation and that heartache. And the feelings of breakup really hit them almost immediately. But this means that the anxious can begin their healing journey much sooner, right? So what happens with the avoidant post-breakup? Now, right after breakup, the avoidant is going to seem unaffected by it, right? It's going to seem like the relationship meant nothing to them and that they moved on so quickly, like they're just completely unaffected by this breakup. And actually, they feel relieved that they're finally out of this relationship, and when the anxious stops chasing them, they feel even more relieved. But again, the avoidant is much slower to process their emotions. So those feelings of breakup, loss, and grief from the relationship, it's not going to hit the avoidant immediately, right? It's going to hit them much more slowly over time. It's really going to start to settle in. It's going to take a few months for that to happen. So all of those insecurities and those fears that the avoidant was feeling, that they used as justification to leave their relationship, over time, those insecurities, those fears, they're really going to start to diminish over the coming months. When those fears and insecurities are finally settled, then the avoidant is really going to have to start their healing journey, right? Because those feelings of grief and loss are really going to start to settle in for the avoidant. And remember, the anxious already started their healing journey, so they're kind of ahead, right? But the avoidant is experiencing a delayed realization. So now they're finally experiencing the loss of that relationship, and they're second guessing their decision to leave the relationship, and they're really starting to miss all of the good qualities of their anxious ex. But because the anxious started their healing journey much sooner, by now they've usually moved on, and this is where it hits the avoidant. They realize that their anxious ex is actually gone. So why doesn't the avoidant just reach out, right? Why don't they reach out and try to reconnect with their anxious ex? Come on. It's so rare that the avoidant actually reaches out, because what does it require for them to reach out? An avoidant's biggest fear: vulnerability. Okay, avoidants just don't do well with vulnerability. So it's very rare that they'll reach out. And even if they do reach out, it'll be very subtle. They might like a post on social media, or they might just watch your story on Instagram. And when they do this, it's just a form of breadcrumbing. I've talked about this in another video. But they're really just putting out bait for their ex to be the one to reach out directly, because they don't want to be the ones to do so, right? They don't want to be vulnerable. So they'll put out breadcrumbs. They'll put out bait in hopes that their anxious ex will be the ones to take the bait and reach out directly. But a secure person is going to see right through this, right? And they're not going to take that bait, and they're just going to move on. Secure people really don't go for avoidance, right? As soon as they detect that their partner is an avoidant, then they're just going to leave that altogether. But yes, other than that, the avoidant is really suffering the loss of this relationship by themselves, right? The realization that they really did lose a relationship. They really did lose a partner who was emotionally available and there for them. And the avoidant really starts to realize all this, and they start reminiscing on all those good parts of their relationship because they're not thinking about their fears anymore. They've had time for those fears to settle. Now, does this happen all of the time? Does it happen 100% of the time? No, but it happens often enough that it's kind of a predictable pattern for the avoidant attachment style. Now, if you're the anxious ex, right, and you've been holding no contact, it's been a few months. Look, every relationship is different, okay? If you feel that there's still something there in that relationship, especially if it was a serious relationship, a long-term relationship, then I am not against reaching out to your avoidant ex. Okay, I'm not against that if you feel that there's still something there. But be careful if you decide to do so. Okay, know your needs in a relationship. Know your boundaries are. Know what works for you. Okay, and don't get caught up in this repeating cycle. Okay, and you need to make sure that you have completely healed from that breakup. Okay, and make sure that you've taken the time and space to work on yourself, your anxious tendencies, and make sure that you've built a secure attachment style for yourself if you decide to reach out. Okay, I hope I brought some good into your life today. If so, please like and subscribe, and please continue to share your stories and your experiences in the comments section. Let's get the discussion going. The discussions have been great, and if you think this video might help somebody, please share it with them. And until next time, you take care. I'll see you in the next.